Discover the secrets behind the Turkish Gümüsay .357 Magnum revolver gifted to NATO leaders by Erdoğan. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan presented personalized Gümüsay .357 Magnum revolvers and live ammunition to NATO heads of state at the conclusion of the Ankara summit. The diplomatic gesture was designed to showcase the historical foundations and current baseline capabilities of the Turkish defense industry, which has grown to become the world's third-largest exporter of small arms. However, the inclusion of functional firearms and cartridges created immediate regulatory, customs, and secure storage obligations for the recipient governments under national firearms laws. The Gümüsay is a discontinued, six-shot doubly-action singly-action revolver produced by MKE in the 1990s as Turkey's first domestically developed modern revolver. It possesses a cylinder and barrel manufactured from high-strength alloy steel to withstand chamber pressures exceeding 35,000 psi and visually closely resembles the Colt Python architecture. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan gave NATO leaders personalized Gümüsay .357 Magnum revolvers at the Ankara summit, a discontinued six-shot doubly-action singly-action DASA revolver produced by MKE in the 1990s. Each revolver was engraved with the recipient's name and placed in a black-lined wooden presentation case, bearing the Turkish flag, the NATO emblem, and a bilingual plaque identifying the Gümüsay as Turkey's first domestically produced revolver. The standard set included 6 live cartridges and a cleaning kit, but the package prepared for British Prime Minister Keir Starmer included 500 rounds, a quantity far beyond the needs of a ceremonial presentation. The weapons were functional, chambered for .357 Magnum and compatible with .38 special ammunition, which meant that governments had to treat them as both controlled firearms and diplomatic souvenirs. The result was a state gift that required police custody, customs processing, secure storage, deactivation, or museum transfer depending on the recipient country. The choice also carried a deliberate historical message. The Gümüsay had little operational importance and no major export record, but it represented an early stage in the development of a Turkish small arms industry that generated approximately $3 billion in exports between 2019 and 2024, making it the third-largest exporter worldwide. The revolvers distributed in Ankara appear to have been prepared as a standardized batch, with the same model, finish, presentation layout, and accessories supplied to each delegation. Photographs released by Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda's office showed a bright finished revolver fitted into a wooden case with black interior lining, 6 cartridges positioned beside the weapon, and the identification plaque mounted inside the lid. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's office confirmed that the leaders received identical weapons with their names engraved directly on the barrel. The gift therefore involved a small but organized production or refurbishment effort, even if the revolvers themselves had been manufactured decades earlier. However, the inclusion of live ammunition materially changed the transfer because national authorities generally regulate the weapon, its ammunition, and its import authorization through separate procedures. A deactivated revolver could have entered many countries as a display object, but a functioning .357 Magnum revolver accompanied by cartridges required immediate intervention by security and customs personnel. For instance, Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever transferred his revolver to Brussels airport police immediately after returning from Ankara, and the weapon was placed in secure storage rather than moved onward with his personal effects. Polish President Karol Narawicki's revolver remained at Warsaw Airport pending customs clearance and a decision on permanent custody, with Polish officials making clear that it would not be fired and would be stored under controlled conditions. The Dutch government kept its revolver at the Netherlands embassy in Ankara and planned to deactivate it before import, while Sweden also left its example at its embassy while the required paperwork was processed. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's revolver was transferred to Palazzo Chigi, where official state gifts are held under government control. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen planned to donate her example to a military museum, while Greece intended to transfer its revolver to the War Museum in Athens. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's weapon was deactivated, retained by Canadian authorities and separated from the ammunition, which remained in Turkey. These responses show that the same gift was treated in at least 5 different ways: police storage, airport customs retention, embassy custody, deactivation before import, and museum transfer. The divergence was not political. It reflected different firearms laws, government gift rules, and security procedures. The Gümüsay, written in Turkish as Gümüsay, was developed by MKE during the early 1990s as its first modern revolver, at a time when the company was attempting to diversify beyond military rifles, machine guns, and ammunition. One of the more interesting aspects of this revolver is the production arrangement itself. MKE retained manufacture of the barrel and cylinder because these components require high-strength alloy steel, deep-hole drilling, precision rifling, and heat treatment capable of withstanding chamber pressures exceeding 35,000 psi generated by .357 Magnum ammunition. Cousin ADS, for its part, assembled the remaining frame, lockwork, and external components before final integration. This division placed the most demanding metallurgical work with MKE, which already had experience in military barrels, ammunition production, steel treatment, and precision machining. This also represented one of the earliest examples of distributed handgun manufacturing within Turkey's defense industry, predating the emergence of today's much larger commercial handgun sector dominated by companies such as Sarsılmaz, Canik, Gürsin, and TSA. Unlike later Turkish handgun programs, the Gümüsay was not conceived as a military replacement, as, by the early 1990s, virtually every major armed force had already standardized on double-stack 919mm semi-automatic pistols. Instead, the revolver targeted the domestic civilian market, sporting shooters, and limited police demand, while demonstrating that Turkish industry could manufacture a modern Magnum revolver without relying on licensed foreign production. The probable customer base consisted of civilian owners, sporting shooters, collectors, and limited police users, not army formations or national police forces, seeking a standard sidearm. No verified production figures have ever been released publicly. Likewise, no confirmed serial number database exists from which production volume can be estimated. The scarcity of surviving examples on both the Turkish civilian market and international collector market suggests production was measured in relatively small batches. Collector estimates generally place output below 10,000 units, with the most frequently cited range between 1,000 and 3,000 revolvers, while lower estimates begin near 500 units and upper estimates extend to 5,000. Mechanically, the Gümüsay is a conventional doubly-action singly-action DASA revolver with an exposed hammer, 6-round swing-out cylinder, crane-mounted cylinder assembly, star extractor, and manually operated ejector rod. In double-action fire, one trigger pull rotates the cylinder, aligns the next chamber with the barrel, cocks the hammer, and releases it. In single-action fire, the shooter manually cocks the hammer, after which the trigger only releases the sear, reducing both trigger travel and pull weight. According to available information, the chambering is .357 Magnum, but the revolver can also fire .38 Special because both cartridges use a bullet diameter of approximately 9.07 mm and share closely related rimmed case geometry. The principal dimensional difference is case length, approximately 33 mm for .357 Magnum and 29.3 mm for .38 Special. That 3.7 mm difference allows the shorter .38 Special cartridge to chamber in a .357 Magnum revolver, while preventing the longer, higher pressure .357 Magnum cartridge from being loaded into most .38 Special revolvers. Under CIP standards, maximum operating pressure is approximately 300 MPa for .357 Magnum and approximately 150 MPa for standard .38 Special. The revolver therefore had to withstand roughly twice the chamber pressure of standard .38 Special ammunition, which helps explain MKE's direct responsibility for the barrel and cylinder. The Gümüsay was apparently produced in 3 barrel lengths, 2.5 inches, 4 inches, and 6 inches. The 2.5-inch version measured approximately 200 mm overall and weighed 960 g. The 4-inch model measured approximately 240 mm and weighed 1,080 g, and the 6-inch version measured approximately 292 mm and weighed 1,120 g. Width remained approximately 39.5 mm because the cylinder determined the broadest point, while height remained approximately 122.5 millimeters across the series. Sight radius increased from 108 millimeters on the 2.5-inch version to 142 millimeters on the 4-inch model and 198 millimeters on the 6-inch revolver. The estimated effective range figures were 75 m, 100 m, and 180 m respectively. The 180 m value should not be interpreted as a normal engagement distance for a revolver, because practical combat accuracy at that range would depend heavily on ammunition consistency, sight picture, shooter skill, and environmental conditions. A muzzle velocity of 370 milliseconds was also associated with the Gümüsay, but without a specified bullet weight, ammunition loading, barrel length, or test method. That velocity is plausible for some .357 Magnum loads, but it cannot be applied uniformly to all 3 barrel configurations. Externally, the Gümüsay follows the Colt Python closely, particularly in its ventilated barrel rib, full-length underlug, medium frame proportions, exposed hammer, and adjustable rear sight. The resemblance is primarily external, as the internal lockwork differs, and there is no indication that Colt transferred production rights, tooling, or engineering data to MKE or Kösen. For instance, the internal mechanism was simplified rather than copied directly from Colt's spring lockwork, reducing the number of precisely fitted components and lowering machining demands. The revolver used an all-steel frame and cylinder, which provided the strength required for .357 Magnum ammunition but increased unloaded weight to as much as 1.12 kilograms in the 6-inch configuration. That weight was high for a handgun carrying only 6 rounds, as, by the 1990s, military and police pistols such as the Beretta 92, SIG Sauer P226, Glock 17, and similar 919mm handguns commonly carried 15 to 18 rounds in detachable magazines. They were also faster to reload, narrower through the receiver, and better suited to mass institutional procurement. Against those pistols, the Gümüsay offered less than half the ready ammunition, slower reloading, greater width across the cylinder, and higher machining complexity. These disadvantages may explain its lack of large-scale police or military adoption. The main unresolved issue after the 2026 summit is the origin of the engraved revolvers, as unlike Colt, Smith & Wesson, or Mandarin revolvers, the Gümüsay has almost no established auction history. Based on the limited number of documented domestic sales, values generally range from $700 to $1,000 for good condition examples to $1,500 to $2,500 for near-mint revolvers with their original box. Therefore, 3 possibilities exist. One possibility is that MKE retained unsold or reserve inventory from the 1990s and selected matching examples for refurbishment. A second is that existing civilian or state-held revolvers were recovered, inspected, refinished, and engraved. A third is that a small commemorative batch was manufactured using surviving drawings, tooling, or recreated components. Retained inventory would indicate long-term storage of completed weapons. Refurbishment would show that spare parts and overhaul capacity remained available, and new manufacture would demonstrate that the production data and at least part of the machining process could still be reactivated. Historically, the Gümüsay itself did not contribute materially to Turkey's later export position, which was built mainly on semi-automatic pistols, shotguns, ammunition, and other weapons produced in much larger quantities. For instance, according to the Small Arms Survey, Turkey exported roughly $3 billion worth of small arms between 2019 and 2024, making it the world's 3rd largest exporter of small arms, behind the United States and Italy. For 2025, using International Customs Statistics HS93 category, firearms, ammunition, and parts, Turkey exported $4.704 billion of both military and civilian small arms, weapon parts, and accessories, primarily towards the United Kingdom $994.5 million, Slovakia $974.3 million, and the United States $399.2 million.